Shumriapsua, welcome to week number 5. It's been a pretty heavy week for content, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. This week on Saturday we went to Phnom Penh on a little bit of a field trip to go see the Tool Slang Prison as well as the Killing Fields. This is a pretty huge part of Cambodian history, and especially recent history, as many of our host families have people who were alive during this time. This happened in the 1970s. 1975, a kind of communist radicalist named Pol Pot rose to power with his Khmer Rouge regime. I guess the regime was called the Anchor, which means the organization. And he basically took over Cambodia with this kind of idea of returning to a purist society. So he wanted to move everybody out of the cities and put them into the farmlands and to be farmers, basically. He considered farmers the old people and all of the people who live in cities, people who are educated, etc., etc. Those are the new people. So it resulted in a pretty massive genocide where they killed lots of people who believed different things, who were educated, foreigners, people who were able to speak more than one language. Yeah, it was rough. It was an intense tour, but it was very important for us to know, I think, being volunteers in this country, just to understand what's been going on since then. We went to the museum, which was originally a school, but it got converted into a prison where they would house and abuse people who they suspected as being enemies of the regime. And there they were confined to these tiny little rooms. They were fed minimalistically, showered minimally, tortured, and basically left to die. And then following that, we went to the Killing Fields, where they would take people from this prison and kill them, when they were done with them. Mothers, babies, it didn't really matter. If anybody was perceived as a threat to the state, and especially in the later years as Pol Pot's paranoia grew, they were just killing people and putting them in mass graves. And this was hidden from the general public for a while, I think, if I'm understanding correctly. These killing fields were not documented. People didn't really know about them until later in history, when they started digging up, bones of people that were buried in these cemeteries. So, yeah, that's rough. And we also learned about some of America's involvement in this war. Not directly, but America's bombing of Cambodia sort of created the recipe, if you will, for Pol Pot to rise to power. Because of America's bombing of innocent people, in order to stop North Vietnamese people coming into the country and then using it as a way into South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. The people of Cambodia were not stoked on America and were more easily led to follow this new leader who had similar adversaries. So it was intense. We saw a lot of pretty upsetting things. But like I said again, I think this is a really important part of being in this country and understanding what people have gone through. This coming week, we're going to have a talk with our families. Basically, one person from each volunteer's family is going to come. We're going to gather at a Wat, and our Khmer teachers will translate, and the families will talk about their experiences and what they know from living through this tragedy. Yeah. And then another thing we learned in class today is landmines and how they're still around in this country. And even in the year 2023, up until October, they've recorded 26 interactions with landmines. I think it was 14 injured and 8 people killed. That math doesn't add up, right? 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 people, 12 people killed, 14 injured. Regardless, what I'm trying to say is there's still landmines in the country. There's still active landmines. The effects of this war are far-reaching, and they're still present. And it was heavy. So we started this week with a hub day and spent most of the day talking about sexual assault awareness, which was another pretty heavy topic. Basically learning about what sexual assault is, what is considered sexual assault, how to keep yourself safe, and what Peace Corps is doing to keep yourself safe. If volunteers wanted to, they could step out. They didn't have to necessarily be a part of this topic since it was such a sensitive subject, but they would have to be filled in privately from what I understand. But it was good, meaning that it was information that we needed to know. Luckily, looking at the statistics of Cambodia, it's pretty low on the sexual assault radar. There's not a whole lot of sexual assault, but it does happen, and it has happened to volunteers in the past. But compared to Southeast Asia and the rest of the world, Cambodia is pretty low on sexual assault. They're high on theft, pretty much low on everything else, which is good to know. But like I said, information that we're required to learn. So those were the two heavy things. Additionally, two big things that we did this week was the PACA implementation. So last week we had to get with our language groups and talk about one of these tools that we're going to use in a classroom that's going to help us facilitate our secondary project. So from what I understand, we actually have to do this within the first 3 months of getting to site. We have to follow the PACA procedure, which is why we had to learn about it now. And then once we've done the PACA and gotten ideas of what needs to happen in our community or what the community needs, we will do in-service training, IST, somewhere around March or April, and they'll kind of guide us onto what are the next steps from there. So my language group, we did assessing priorities, which was asking the classroom what they thought they need or want to see in their community. I had pretty low ambitions going into the classroom. I didn't really know what was going on. I remember the day that we did it, that my group talked about it, I was exhausted and I was not as part of the conversation as I felt like it should be. And coming into it on this day, I felt similar. I don't know why. I was just totally out of it for this PACA thing. And I know it's really important, but I was just not having a day on either of the days. Luckily, my teammates really understood what was going on. Taylor and Binta, they really carried the team, I felt like. Just knowing what was to be done, how to talk to the students and guide them. I was really impressed with what the students had to say. I mean, granted, we had our LCF in the room with us. He's our language teacher, and he translated for us. So he was able to tell the students, like, basically write out a list of things that changes you would like to see in your school community. And once they understood the prompt, they wrote and wrote and wrote. We split the groups up into 2 groups. I think there was like 15 or 20 kids. So we split them into boys and girls as per Cambodian gender norms. Typically, that's how you do things. And so a group of boys worked and a group of girls worked, and they created pretty big lists of things that they wanted to see change in their school. So then we had each team present, and then we had them go back and pick the top 5 things from their list, and then we compared the 2 top 5s and then had them vote on which is the most important. And then they left, and then we as volunteers tallied their votes to see what would be the most important thing. So each language group only got to practice with one of the PACA tools. There's 4 of them, but we did get to debrief afterwards and learn what everybody else did in their room and kind of how their procedures went. So that was good. Necessary, kind of boring. I wouldn't say it's boring. It's hard. No. Necessary but good. So then, another pretty important thing this week was my 3rd community teach. This is 3 of 4, so this next week we'll be doing the final one. Actually, I did it today, but I'll talk about it next week. I got to work with my friend Cody, and we got to put together a really solid lesson plan. We were teaching secondary school this time, so this is my 2nd time teaching secondary school, and I felt like I was a lot more prepared this time. My first time teaching secondary, we underestimated how much the students knew, and so they knew everything we taught them. We moved through it very quickly. This time me and Cody prepared for that. We talked with the people who were teaching the day before, so we knew they knew all of these words. We reviewed some simple words, and then we got into some bigger phrases and new concepts that it actually seemed like they were learning, which was exciting. The subject was jobs and ambitions. So the day before they learned about what do you want to do, and today we took that and we said, why do you want to do it? And what skills do you need to get there? So we reviewed some of the jobs. We had them come up with jobs that they know, the English word for that maybe we didn't have drawings or pictures of, and then we got into some sentence structures. So we taught them about skills. For instance, if you're an author, you need to be able to write, you gotta have a passion for reading and writing, etc. If you're a doctor in this country, you have to know English or French, you have to study medicine, you have to want to help people, right? So these are skills that you would need to become this doctor. And then we had them look at a mock resume and try to create their own. So the resume had, here's your work history, here is your educational history, and these are the skills you have for the job you're applying for. It went pretty well. I would say the one thing that maybe students struggled on was they haven't had any work history, and so a lot of them seemed a little confused how to be creative and make up their own work history, but they seem to understand the skills and they seem to understand the education history, so they did that part well. I'd say overall it was a pretty solid lesson plan, and yeah, I feel happy about it. It was executed well. The resume thing was Cody's idea. She was super stoked on it, and yeah, she took the lead for that second part. In this lesson plan, we were supposed to have one person specifically do 25 minutes, the first 25 minutes, and then the other person do the second 25 minutes. Generally, the first half is easier because you're doing the words, you're doing some review. It's just introducing the vocabulary, and then the second half of class is the application, so that's really making sure they got it. And I remember I only slept 3 hours the night before, so I was exhausted. Cody really wanted to do the hard stuff, and I was totally cool with it. So I think it worked out great. It's a pretty good dynamic, and I feel like we both felt really good coming out of the lesson. And then finally I had a really busy Sunday. The morning I went and planned with two of my favorite people. We got to do a lesson plan for our final community teach, which I said was today, and we'll talk about that next week. And then people came over in the afternoon to play some music, and then we went to go play some football after that. So it's a pretty great way to end the week. And yeah, those are the big things. Thanks again for listening. See you next time. Jimmy Apsua. I keep doing that, and that means hello. But we're not saying hello. I'm going to say Akun. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Bye.